I'm Lisa, 42, and literally last weekend, my role as the family's unsung hero? Yeah, it completely imploded. The empire I'd built, the business I'd poured my soul into to keep us all connected, it shattered at my own birthday dinner. My family, led by my brother Garrett, demanded I play the dutiful sister, propping up his failing business yet again. When I pushed back, the room froze, forks midair, eyes wide, like I'd betrayed some sacred pact. "You're tearing us apart," Garrett shouted, his face red, with my parents and sister staring like I'd burned the house down. But here's the truth, their dismissal didn't break me. It woke me up. I'm not just fighting back, I'm rewriting the story they tried to erase me from. A quick note, this story is copyrighted by the YouTube channel Brim. Reposting, revoicing, or editing this content without permission constitutes copyright infringement. Thank you for respecting original creative work. Now, back to the story. The restaurant was upscale, all crystal chandeliers and white tablecloths, my treat to celebrate my birthday. I'd planned it for months, thinking maybe this time they'd see me. My hands smoothed my silk dress as I scanned the table, Mom adjusting her glasses, Dad scrolling his phone, Garrett smirking at some private joke with my sister Lena. I'd built a logistics company from nothing, turning it into a multi-million-dollar operation, yet here I was, still the invisible one. I cleared my throat, offering a toast. "To family," I said, voice steady. Their glasses barely lifted, eyes already drifting. Garrett leaned back, arms crossed, and said, "Nice place, Lisa. Must have cost a fortune." The words stung not for the money but for the implication I was showing off. I gripped my wine glass, knuckles whitening, forcing a smile. They didn't know about the late nights, the loans, the deals I'd clawed my way through. To them, I was just the sister who got lucky. As the waiter poured more wine, I caught Lena whispering to Mom, her eyes flicking toward me, then away. My stomach twisted. I'd spent years keeping this family afloat, bailing Garrett out, hosting holidays, even paying Mom's medical bills. Yet their glances carried the same old judgment. I wasn't enough. The chatter moved to Garrett's business, his big plans for expansion, and I felt the familiar ache of being sidelined. I shifted in my seat, the chair creaking under me, and thought, this is it. This is where it starts to change. I didn't know how yet, but the spark was there, burning. The clink of cutlery filled the restaurant, but my mind drifted back, the sting of Garrett's smirk pulling me into memories I'd tried to bury. I was 12, standing in our cramped living room, holding a science fair trophy, my first big win. Mom glanced at it, said, "That's nice, Lisa," then turned to gush over Garrett's football jersey framed like a relic on the wall. My hands shook as I set the trophy down, its cheap plastic wobbling on the shelf. That was the pattern. Lena's piano recitals got standing ovations, my debate team victories got a nod, maybe a good job if I was lucky. By 16, I'd stopped showing them my awards, tucking them under my bed, the dust piling up like my resentment. In college, I majored in business, aced every course, and landed a startup internship. I called home, voice bubbling, to tell them I'd pitched a logistics app to real investors. Dad cut me off. "Lena's engaged, Lisa, big party this weekend." I swallowed hard, my throat tight, and mumbled congratulations. At the wedding, I overheard Mom telling Aunt Claire, "Lisa's so independent, always off doing her own thing." It sounded like praise, but it cut deeper, a polite way of saying I didn't belong. My fingers twisted the hem of my dress as I stood alone by the punch bowl watching them dance. Years later, when I launched my company, I didn't even invite them to the opening. They wouldn't have come anyway. Garrett was too busy celebrating his entrepreneurial used car lot, which I secretly funded to keep it afloat. My success was invisible, a ghost they couldn't see. Back at the dinner table, I blinked away the memories, my fork hovering over my untouched salmon. Garrett was mid-story, boasting about a deal he hadn't earned. Lena laughed, her earrings glinting, while Mom nodded proudly. I pressed my lips together, the ache in my chest growing sharper. They didn't know I'd built a network that could make or break businesses like Garrett's with a single call. My fingers brushed my phone in my purse, the weight of it grounding me. I wasn't just the overlooked sister anymore. I'd built something they couldn't ignore, even if they tried. The waiter refilled my water, his polite smile a stark contrast to the table's indifference. I straightened, my shoulders squaring, and caught my reflection in the wineglass, eyes fierce, jaw set. They could celebrate their version of family all they wanted, but I'd been carving my own path for years. The spark from earlier flickered brighter. I didn't need their validation, not anymore. But as the chatter droned on, I wondered if they'd ever see me, or if I'd have to make them. The restaurant's chatter faded as my mind sank into the memory of building my company, a secret I'd nurtured in the shadows of my family's neglect. It started 5 years ago, in a cramped apartment, my laptop glowing at 3 a.m. I'd been working a dead-end logistics job, crunching numbers for someone else's dream, when the idea hit: a platform to streamline supply chains for small businesses. My hands trembled as I sketched the concept on a napkin, coffee stains smudging the edges. I knew it could work, but doubt gnawed at me. Nobody in my family believed I was capable of something big. Still, I pushed forward, fueled by a quiet defiance. The first year was brutal. I maxed out credit cards, skipped meals, and cold-called suppliers who laughed me off. My fingers bled from nervous picking as I pitched to investors, my voice steady despite the rejections. Then, one night, a small retailer took a chance on my prototype. I sat on my couch, staring at the signed contract, tears burning my eyes. That was the aha moment, the spark that kept me going. I worked harder, coding late, negotiating deals, building a network that stretched across states. By year 3, my company was turning profits, and last month, we hit 8 figures. I'd done it alone, no family cheering me on, just me and my grit. I never told them. Not when I signed my first major client, not when I bought my house, not even when I bailed Garrett out again, funneling money to his failing business through a consulting fee to spare his pride. My success was mine, a fortress I'd built brick by brick. At the dinner table, I shifted, my heels clicking softly against the floor. They were still talking about Garrett's big plans, oblivious to the empire I'd created. My phone buzzed in my purse, a notification from my CFO about tomorrow's deal, one that could triple our reach. I pressed my palm against the table, grounding myself. They didn't know the woman I'd become, the one who could shift markets with a signature. Mom glanced at me, her smile thin. "You're quiet tonight, Lisa." I nodded, lips tight, my heart pounding with the weight of what I'd built. They saw the sister who paid for dinners, not the CEO who'd outgrown their small world. My fingers twitched, itching to check my phone, to confirm the deal that would change everything. I wasn't invisible, not to the people who mattered, the ones who'd signed contracts, not birthday cards. The spark from earlier flared, a quiet promise. Tomorrow, I'd step into my power, but tonight I had to survive this table. The morning of my birthday dinner, I stood in my office, the city skyline glinting through the window, my fingers tracing the edge of a contract that could redefine my company. Tomorrow's deal with a national retailer would lock in millions, cementing my place in an industry that once ignored me. My desk was cluttered with papers, my laptop open to a spreadsheet of projections. I exhaled, my breath shaky, pride mixing with dread. Tonight I'd face my family, their predictable indifference waiting like a storm. I slipped the contract into my bag, my hands steady but my stomach knotting at the thought of the dinner I'd planned. Why did I keep trying? At home I stood before my closet, choosing a navy silk dress, its fabric cool against my skin. I wanted to look polished, unshakable, even if I felt like that 12-year-old with the dusty trophy. My phone buzzed, my assistant confirming the restaurant reservation. I'd picked the place carefully, upscale, elegant, a stage to show them I wasn't invisible. But as I applied mascara, my hand faltered, the brush grazing my cheek. What was I proving? They'd never cared about my wins. Garrett's failing car lot would dominate the conversation, Lena's promotion would get the toasts, and I'd be the quiet one, paying the bill. I drove to the restaurant, my grip tight on the steering wheel, the city lights blurring past. My mind flickered to the deal again. Signing it tomorrow would mean security, legacy, proof I was more than their afterthought. But the closer I got to the restaurant, the heavier the air felt. I parked, my heels clicking on the pavement, and paused outside the glass doors. Inside, I saw them already seated. Mom fussing with her napkin, Dad checking his watch, Garrett gesturing wildly, Lena nodding along. My chest tightened. I'd built an empire, but here I was still the ghost. I smoothed my dress, my fingers lingering on the fabric, and pushed the door open. The hostess greeted me, her smile warm, a stark contrast to the table I was walking toward. My bag felt heavy, with the contract inside. a reminder of the power I held. I squared my shoulders, my jaw set, and took the first step into the lion's den. They didn't know about the deal, the company, the woman I'd become. Tonight I'd play their game, smile through their jabs, but tomorrow I'd change the rules. The spark from last night burned steady now, a quiet fire. I wasn't here to beg for their attention. I was here to survive it. I slid into my seat at the restaurant, the chatter pausing just long enough for Mom to nod and say, "You made it, Lisa." Her tone was flat, like I'd just walked into a board meeting, not my own birthday dinner. Garrett barely looked up, his fingers drumming the table as he launched back into a story about a huge client he'd landed. I folded my hands in my lap, nails digging into my palms, and forced a smile. The chandelier light caught Lena's earrings as she leaned forward, hanging on his every word. Dad sipped his wine, eyes on his phone. I was there, but I wasn't. "So Lisa," Lena said, her voice syrupy, "still working those long hours?" Her smile didn't reach her eyes, and I caught the edge in her tone, like my career was a cute hobby. I nodded, my throat tight. "Yeah, keeps me busy." Garrett snorted, leaning back. "Busy? Must be nice to have all that free time to play CEO." My jaw clenched, the word play slicing through me. I reached for my water, the glass cool against my fingers, and took a slow sip to steady myself. They didn't know my company employed hundreds, moved millions in goods. To them, I was still the kid with the science fair trophy they forgot to clap for. Mom chimed in, her voice bright but pointed. "You should relax more, Lisa. Garrett's been working so hard." She patted his arm, and he grinned, basking in it. My fork scraped my plate, pressed the sound sharp in my ears. I wanted to scream that I'd funded his hard work, that my free time was spent saving his business. Instead, I murmured, "Sure, Mom." Lena tilted her head, her lips pursed. "You look tired, though. You okay?" The concern was fake, a jab dressed as care. I met her gaze, my eyes steady, and said, "Never better." She looked away first. The waiter arrived, setting down appetizers, and I watched my family dig in, their laughter rising as they swapped stories about Lena's new corner office and Garrett's genius marketing plan. My plate sat untouched, my appetite gone. I shifted, my dress rustling, and caught my reflection in the window, eyes sharp, shoulders tense. They didn't see the woman who'd built an empire. They saw a placeholder, a wallet, a shadow. The spark in my chest burned hotter, not anger, but resolve. I wasn't here to win them over anymore. I was here to endure, to wait for the moment I'd stop pretending. The dinner plates were cleared, and the restaurant's hum softened as Garrett stood, a grin spreading across his face. "We've got a surprise," he announced, gesturing to a waiter who wheeled out a projector. My stomach twisted, a faint hope flickering. Maybe this was their way of finally seeing me. "Best family memories," Lena chimed in, her voice bright as she clapped her hands. The lights dimmed and a slideshow flickered onto the wall. I leaned forward, my fingers brushing the edge of the table, waiting for a glimpse of myself. The first photo appeared. Garrett and Lena, kids on a swing set, laughing. My breath caught. I wasn't there. Photo after photo flashed by, Mom and Dad at Lena's graduation, Garrett's first car lot opening, family vacations I'd paid for but skipped to work. My hands clenched in my lap, nails biting into my skin. Not one image of me. Not my college degree. Not the time I flew them to Hawaii. Not even a blurry shot from my childhood. The room seemed to shrink, their laughter ringing hollow. "Remember this?" Mom said, pointing at a photo of Lena's wedding, where I'd been a guest, not a memory. My chest burned, the spark from earlier, now a quiet inferno. I was erased, a ghost in their story. Garrett caught my eye, his smile faltering for a split second before he raised his glass. "To us," he said, and they all toasted, oblivious. I didn't lift my glass. My throat was too tight, my heart pounding with the truth I'd always known but never faced. I was invisible to them. Every sacrifice, every dollar, every late night, they didn't see it. They didn't see me. I pushed my chair back, the scrape barely audible, and murmured, "Be right back." No one looked up. In the bathroom, I locked the door, my reflection pale in the mirror. My hands shook as I pulled out my phone, the screen glowing in the dim light. I opened my email, fingers hovering over the draft I'd written weeks ago but never sent. The one terminating Garrett's supply contract, the lifeline keeping his business alive. It wasn't revenge, it was release. I'd carried them long enough. My thumb pressed send, the soft click echoing in the silence. I exhaled, My shoulders loosening, the weight of years lifting just a fraction. They'd painted me out of their memories. Now, I was stepping out of their story. I tucked my phone away, smoothed my dress, and walked back to the table, my steps steady. They were still laughing, unaware. The slideshow looped, my absence glaring. I sat, my face calm, but inside the fire burned brighter. The slideshow looped, laughter rising around me, but I sat still, my hands folded, the weight of that sent email settling like a stone in my chest. The bathroom's fluorescent hum still echoed in my mind the moment my thumb pressed send, replaying in sharp focus. Terminating Garrett's contract wasn't a snap decision. It was the culmination of years of being sidelined, my contributions reduced to background noise. I stared at my untouched dessert, the chocolate glaze pooling on the plate, and felt a strange calm. My phone stayed silent in my purse. No instant fallout, no immediate regret, just quiet. Garrett's voice cut through, bragging about a new deal he thought was coming, oblivious to the lifeline I'd just cut. My fingers brushed the stem of my wine glass, the cool glass grounding me. I pictured his face when he'd get the email Monday morning, his jaw dropping, his hands scrambling for his phone, calling suppliers who'd no longer answer. I'd been his safety net for years, funneling contracts to his failing business, my name never mentioned. Now, I was done carrying him. My eyes flicked to Mom, her smile soft as she patted Lena's hand, then to Dad, still scrolling his phone. They'd never know what I'd done, not yet. Lena leaned over, her voice low. "You're so quiet, Lisa. Everything okay?" Her brow furrowed, but her eyes held that same pitying glint like I was a puzzle she didn't care to solve. I smiled tightly, my lips barely moving. "Just enjoying the show." She nodded, unconvinced, and turned back to Garrett's story. My heart thudded steady but loud as I replayed the email's words. Effective immediately, our partnership is terminated. No explanation, no apology, just finality. It wasn't anger driving me, it was clarity. I'd spent decades begging to be seen, and that slideshow, that glaring absence, was their final verdict. I shifted, my dress rustling, and caught my reflection in the window again. Eyes sharp, unyielding. The spark I'd felt all night was no longer just a flicker. It was a steady flame. I wasn't destroying Garrett's business out of spite. I was reclaiming my power, refusing to be their invisible ATM. The waiter cleared my plate, his polite nod a small anchor in the storm inside me. They'd call me bitter later, I knew that. But this wasn't about them anymore. It was about me, choosing myself for the first time. I sipped my wine, the taste sharp on my tongue, and waited for the dinner to end, knowing I'd already changed the game. The slideshow flickered off, and the restaurant lights brightened, casting sharp shadows across the table. Garrett leaned back, smug, as Mom clapped lightly, saying, "Such a great surprise." My family's chatter resumed, oblivious to the email I'd sent minutes ago, the one that would unravel Garrett's world by Monday. My phone buzzed faintly in my purse, a confirmation from my assistant that the contract termination was received. I kept my face neutral, my hands resting lightly on the tablecloth, but inside, my pulse raced. They'd painted me out of their memories, and now they'd feel the weight of my absence. Weeks later, the fallout began. Garrett called me, his voice tight, accusing. "What the hell, Lisa? You cut my supply line?" I stood in my office, staring out at the city, my fingers tracing the edge of my desk. "It was a business decision," I said calmly, my voice steady despite the tremor in my chest. He sputtered. "You're sabotaging me." I didn't flinch. "I've been propping you up for years, Garrett. You never even said thank you." The line went silent, and I hung up, my hand steady. That night, Lena texted. "How could you do this to him?" Mom called, her voice sharp. "You're being selfish, Lisa. Dad just sent an email. Fix this." They were circling, painting me as the villain, their words like knives aimed at my guilt. But I didn't bend. At the next family gathering, I didn't show. Their voicemails piled up, each one angrier, blaming me for Garrett's layoffs, his debts. I sat on my couch, my fingers scrolling through their messages, their accusations blurring together. They didn't mention the slideshow, the years of ignoring me, the way they'd erased me long before I pulled the plug. I set my phone down, my shoulders relaxing, and looked around my quiet home, photos of my team, my awards, my life. Their hypocrisy was clear now. They'd taken my support, my money, my silence, and called it loyalty. I stood, my bare feet cold on the hardwood, and walked to the window. The city sparkled below, a world I'd built without them. I didn't need their approval anymore. Their narrative, bitter sister, family traitor, was theirs, not mine. I'd exposed their blindness, not with a scream but with a single email, and walked away. The spark I'd felt at the dinner was a fire now, steady and mine. I turned from the window, my steps light, ready for what came next. The city hummed outside my window, but inside my apartment, the warmth of laughter filled the air. A stark contrast to the cold sting of that birthday dinner. I'd invited my team, my chosen family, for a quiet celebration a week after the slideshow betrayal. They sprawled across my living room, plates of takeout balanced on their knees, their voices overlapping with stories and easy banter. My CFO Maria sat cross-legged on the rug, gesturing wildly as she recounted a client's ridiculous demand. My lead developer Jamal chuckled, his fork pausing mid-air. I leaned against the couch, my fingers wrapped around a coffee mug, feeling a lightness I hadn't known in years. Maria caught my eye, her smile soft. "You okay, boss? You're quiet tonight?" I nodded, my lips curving. "Just happy." It was true. These were the people who saw me, celebrated my wins, not just my wallet. Jamal raised his glass of soda, grinning. "To Lisa, who keeps this ship sailing." The room erupted in cheers, glasses clinking, and my chest swelled, the ache from my family's rejection fading in their warmth. I glanced at a framed photo on the shelf. Not of my biological family, but of us at the office, arms around each other after signing our first major client. My fingers brushed the mug's handle, grounding me in this moment. Unlike the dinner table where I'd been invisible, here I was seen. Maria leaned over, her voice low. "You've been different lately, stronger." I met her gaze, my shoulders relaxing. She didn't know about the email, the contract, or the slideshow, but she saw the shift in me. I'd chosen these allies, people who valued my work, my heart, not just my name. The contrast hit hard, my family's table with its forced smiles and sharp jabs, versus this room, alive with genuine care. I set my mug down, my hands steady, and joined the conversation, laughing as Jamal mimicked a client's voice. The spark I'd felt at the dinner, the one that burned when I sent that email, glowed differently now, not defiance, but belonging. I didn't need to prove myself here. My team knew my late nights, my risks, my triumphs. As the night wound down, Maria squeezed my hand, her eyes warm. "Your family, Lisa?" I smiled, my throat tight, and realized I'd already found what my family never gave me. The fire in me wasn't about destruction anymore. It was about building this, a life where I wasn't erased. The morning after my team's gathering, I sat at my kitchen counter, sunlight streaming through the window, my phone buzzing with another voicemail from Lena. "Lisa, you can't just ignore us." Her voice cracked, laced with guilt-trip theatrics. "Garrett's business is tanking because of you." I deleted it. My thumb steady, the sting of her words dulled by the peace I'd found last night. My family kept calling, texting, demanding I fix the mess they blamed me for, but I was done bending. My fingers tapped the counter, the rhythm grounding me as I sipped my coffee. I wasn't shutting them out for revenge, I was building walls to protect my sanity. I opened my laptop, drafting a simple email to my family. "I need space. Please respect." My hands hovered over the keyboard, the cursor blinking. I didn't explain the slideshow, the years of being overlooked, or the contract I'd pulled from Garrett. They wouldn't hear it anyway. I hit send, my breath steady, and felt the weight of their expectations lift a little more. My phone stayed silent for an hour, blissful, but I knew it wouldn't last. Sure enough, Mom called, her voice sharp. "This isn't how family works, Lisa." I let it go to voicemail, my jaw tight. Family had meant me giving, them taking, for too long. Later, I met Maria for lunch at a cafe, the clink of cups around us soothing. "They're still hounding you?" she asked, her eyes narrowing as I nodded. I traced the rim of my glass, the condensation cool under my fingertip. "They think I'm the villain," I said softly. Maria leaned forward, her voice firm. "You're not, you're just done being their doormat." Her words settled in me, solidifying the boundaries I was setting. I'd keep my family at arm's length, no more dinners, no more bailouts. If they wanted contact, it'd be on my terms, not theirs. Back home, I hung a new photo from last night's gathering, my team's smiles bright against the wall. My fingers brushed the frame, a quiet promise to myself, no more chasing approval from people who erased me. The fire in my chest burned steady, not angry but resolute. I wasn't cutting them off to hurt them, I was choosing me. Garrett's business might fail, but that was his weight to carry now. I glanced at my phone, another text from Lena flashing. I didn't open it. Instead, I turned to the window, the city alive below, and felt the strength of my new boundaries take root. The deal I'd been chasing for months closed that morning, the ink still fresh on a contract that would expand my company nationwide. I stood in my office, the city sprawling below, my fingers tracing the signature line on the document. Pride surged. But it wasn't just about the money or the growth, it was about reclaiming my name, my legacy, from the shadow my family had cast over it. They'd always seen me as the lesser sibling, the one who got lucky, but this was mine, built from years of unseen work. I set the contract down, my hands steady, and felt the fire in me shift from defiance to purpose. I decided to use my success to give back, not to my family but to the community that had shaped me. I called Maria, my voice firm. "Let's fund a mentorship program for young entrepreneurs." She paused, then laughed. "You're unstoppable, Lisa." We spent the afternoon sketching plans, my pen scratching across a notepad as we outlined workshops, grants, a space for kids like I was, overlooked but hungry to prove themselves. My fingers tapped the table, excitement building. This wasn't just charity, it was a legacy that carried my name, not theirs. Later, I drove to a local high school, invited to speak at a career day. Standing before a room of wide-eyed teens, I shared my story, not the polished version but the real one. The late nights, the rejections, the family who never saw me. My voice caught as I said, "Your worth isn't in their applause, it's in what you build." A girl in the front row nodded, her hands clasped tight, and I saw myself in her. I left her my card, my heart full. This was my family's name now, tied to impact, not erasure. Back home, I hung a new plaque in my office, a community award with my name etched in gold. My fingers brushed the letters, a quiet smile spreading. Garrett, Lena, Mom, Dad, they could keep their version of the family story. I'd rewritten mine. The slideshow, the dinner, their accusations faded against the weight of what I was creating. The fire in me burned bright, not for revenge, but for the lives I'd touch, the legacy I'd leave. I wasn't their invisible sister anymore. I was Lisa, and my name meant something. I stood on my balcony, the city lights twinkling below, a cool breeze brushing my skin as I held a glass of wine, its weight familiar in my hand. Months had passed since the dinner, the slideshow, the email that shifted everything. I'd spent years chasing my family's approval, believing their love would fill the ache of being unseen. Now, staring at the skyline I'd conquered, I realized their validation was a mirage. My worth wasn't in their eyes, it was in me, in the empire I'd built, the lives I was touching. My fingers tightened around the glass, the fire in my chest now a steady glow of peace. I thought of the mentorship program, the teens I'd met, their dreams echoing mine. I thought of my team, their laughter filling my home, their belief in me unwavering. My family's voices, Garrett's accusations, Lena's texts, Mom's guilt trips, had faded to a dull hum. I hadn't spoken to them in weeks, and their silence no longer hurt. I'd sent one last email, calm and final. "I wish you well, but I'm done carrying you." My thumb had hovered over the send button, not out of doubt, but because I knew it was the last piece of me I'd give them. They hadn't replied, and I didn't need them to. I turned back inside, my bare feet soft on the hardwood, and glanced at the photos on my shelf. My team, my awards, my life. The girl who hid trophies under her bed was gone. I set the wine glass down, my hands steady, and smiled. I'd built this piece. Brick by brick, not by tearing them down but by rising above. The spark from that night, the one that flared when I sent the email, had burned away my need for their approval. I was enough. So, have you ever felt invisible to the people who should see you most? That's where I was, caught in a family who wrote me out of their story. But I found my own, through hard work, chosen allies, and a quiet stand that changed everything. So what do you think? Did I go too far, or not far enough? Drop a comment below with your take. Have you ever had to draw a line to reclaim your worth? Share your story, I'd love to hear it. And don't forget to subscribe for more. You don't need anyone's permission to shine, just your own. Keep building, keep rising, and know you're never as invisible as you think.